aspects of Oregon Computer Science Teachers Association. One, we lost our funding, major funding from the state that we've used over the last 3 years, 4 years to reach a lot of teachers throughout the state. And COVID. So we couldn't have any face-to-face conferences this summer. And so we put together 4 major sessions, online sessions. The one you're hanging out in here today is the high school or secondary curriculum primarily. And we have one for Python. We have a middle school curriculum and an elementary curriculum. And we have 75 people more or less who are taking part in these here this August. But so I want to leave any idea that I'm an expert. I'm just old. Kathy will remind me of that a couple times as we go here. But I have taught computer science for a long time. So I think I'm going on 38 years now of teaching some form of computer science. And I keep trying new things every year, throwing a lot of stuff on the wall. And so if I have used anything that's effective, it's just because it's in my particular culture, my kids, my classroom, my sandbox, they seem to work. So I'm not coming as an expert, I'm coming as a facilitator to help with conversations on how to be most effective. And also admit that it was only a month ago or so that I told a friend of mine who's registered but not here, fortunately, that I was going to retire if I had to teach online this fall. I can retire, so let's just cut to the chase on that. I could possibly retire anytime, and there's still a chance that I will. But you know, I was fairly frustrated with not being able to hang with kids in the spring. I didn't teach synchronously. It was delivering video, email, and that was not an effective. I didn't think I was effective. I think my students probably learned, but I didn't feel comfortable with that. And so as I thought about where we're headed in this new era of online teaching, and we're calling it, I think the state may be calling it CDL for comprehensive distance learning, but you know, it's going to be more robust than it was in the spring. It's going to require more synchronous connections with our students, and we're going to have some strategies that we feel comfortable with. And the bottom line is we need the teachers to be able to feel like they're effective, and we need the students to be able to feel like they're not wasting their time and they're actually learning something significant. And so the upside of this really is that we as computer science teachers, high-tech teachers, possibly have the opportunity to lead the way. So if we flip the script a little bit from my discouragement of really not wanting to do this another run to, hey, there's some possibilities here. There's possibly a silver lining. There's a way to maybe help our colleagues do their job better as well as doing a good job ourselves of bringing our students to the learning table. So my hope for this session is that you'll be able to take something from here and maybe give something back that will help you kind of revitalize your approach, maybe get all of our heads up and say, hey, we can do this. We cannot think outside the box. There are people who are trying some things, and I'm going to pick and choose and from some things that we all throw, we throw things on the wall. There are some things that are working. And I certainly don't have all those answers, but we're going to explore some of them.
So you left one thing out. Where have you taught for 43 years?
Well, have you read my name?
I don't think you said. Well, I don't think you said. Everybody should read their name.
I started teaching in Sherwood in 1978.
In the same schoolroom class, except for next year, which you'll be.
It was elementary PE actually, and I worked my way into Rocket Club and Commodore 64 and Computer Club and on to, Trash 80s and Tandy's 1000. And if you know what that means, you're older than you should be. And all the way up to, and now I'm experimenting with Python and Ruby and trying to stay on keep myself between the rails, and I can't learn everything. And that's another I'll share some philosophy about giving up this stage on the stage. I had to do that a long time ago to survive. And I'm a learning manager. I don't claim to be an expert. And my philosophy has been recently, I had to give it up. When I taught science, I could be smarter than a ninth graders as far as physical science. I could actually stay ahead of them, but I can't do that anymore. And so, but again, our business is we're not getting paid for how smart we are. At least I hope not. I'm getting paid for how well we bring our kids to significant success. So once I bought into that philosophy, it relaxed a little bit about having to know everything. And that allowed me to also provide more curriculum than I would have otherwise. So there's some things that we can talk about. But yes, this will be my 42nd year in the Sherwood School District, most of it teaching computer science, and still looking for ways to help students become better at being themselves.
And around long enough to see a whole brand new stinking school open with no kids in it next year. Sorry.
So if you run down 99 past through Sherwood, you'll see this monstrous school that's currently being built.
It's like a castle.
It is, and so I've moved all my truck pickup loads of equipment in there, and the boxes I won't even need to open the boxes until probably late November because it'll be a brand new school with brand new computers, with brand new everything, and we're going to be teaching online. So I know you who are teachers are experiencing this. You've been told you're probably going to be teaching full online for 9 weeks or in that range. And then they're building a structure so that when we drop into a hybrid model 9 weeks out or whenever, that will stay within that rhythm for the year, dropping class sizes down to 24 from 40. But I don't know, I'm losing my reach because I had 40 per class and now I'm going to be 24. I don't know where those other kids are going. There's so many unknowns, but that's the current story and probably not much different than yours, other than I have a new school and you probably don't. But that in fact doesn't matter at all now because I won't be in it anyway. Now, through the course of looking for resources and talking with friends, my son is employed by a group called Slalom, and Team Slalom has been gracious enough to share some resources, ideas. They're here today in mass. I'll introduce them to you, but they'll be more specific. I'm going to turn the presentation over to them here in just a minute and let them share some things. And the reason I'm excited about this is because this is a fresh idea. These are, well, okay, Elizabeth, you were an educator, and but Slalom is a business, is an industry-based consulting company that spends that all they do right now is online collaboration with clients and employees, and Ginger will share more on that maybe, but what I'm interested in is that I'm not getting from my school district or my ESD or the ODE specific ways to be effective with online construction. I've had to go look for it. Well, we have some folks that are going to share with you today about what they have done because they have to be effective. Their bottom line is based upon effectiveness in business communication and how they do things online. So they have a little more at stake maybe than we do in one sense, but they'll bring some fresh ideas to us. So I'm going to introduce, we've got Lindsay, Elizabeth, and Ginger. And so you see them there. They're friends of ours, recent friends of ours, great people. And their Team Slalom. Ginger, being the point person on this, take it away and introduce your team.
Thank you for that fabulous introduction, Terrell and Kathy. And hello, everyone. First thing I'll say is thank you for being teachers and thank you for shaping the future. You all do really impactful amazing work, and we are grateful for you. And I'll just start by saying thank you, because I don't know that you hear it enough. So with that, I want to just quick introduction, because we've got a lot to share with you today, and want to get into the fun stuff. But want to first just say we want this to be an interactive conversation. So please unmute yourself and interject at any time, or just drop something into the chat window, and we'll stop and have a dialogue. And when I met Terrel a few months ago, it was right when COVID had hit, and we were as Slalom, we were wondering, what can we do to help our community? And one of the things that came to mind was our teachers in our schools, who were really thrust overnight into this new digital e-learning situation. And so much pressure is heading your way in the fall. And we're here just to share a few tips and tricks that we found really helpful over the last few months as we're working in a virtual workplace. And so we're not here to really give you any pedagogy guidance, but really here to share some of the things that we found have really been helpful in engaging a virtual audience. And so if you can take some of those business practices and use them in a classroom setting, that's really our goal here, is to share some of these things that we've really found to work as we've learned what the new normal is all about over the last few months. And just a quick introduction of who we are. I'm Ginger. I do a lot of our public sector work in Oregon. Been doing consulting in DC and Portland for a long time. I'm more importantly a wannabe professor and a lifetime student. So with that, I'll give Elizabeth and Lindsay a few moments to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name's Elizabeth Borland. I am a business advisory services consultant. That's just a fancy way of saying my job is to help people navigate change and help communicate what that change is all about. That's the work I'm passionate about doing. In a former life, I like to say I was a teacher. I come from a long line of educators, so tonight I feel right at home with all of you. Lindsay?
Mute, wrong, Grace there. Thanks guys. I'm Lindsay Wapshall, also a business advisory service, so similar to Elizabeth. And I have a former life as a TV news journalist. So I'm here to bring you some tips and tricks on just how to show up with strong presence virtually.
Thanks, team. So that's a bit about who we are. I'll also maybe share that we've been doing some work recently with the Oregon Higher Education Coordinating Commission. They're the kind of the state agency that oversees a lot of the higher ed stuff in Oregon. And really been monitoring what's going on and aware of the governor's guidance recently, as Terrel said, that you all are really being thrust into a new normal in the fall. No one's done this before. This is virtual teaching with very little notice is a scary place to be. So I'll just start by saying, are you all a little nervous about what's coming your way in a month or two? Ten times. Well, I know if I were in your shoes, I certainly would be a little nervous. Doing anything for the first time is a good reason to be nervous. And just wanted to say that you're not alone. This is something that school districts across the country are all trying to figure out at the same time. And we've been doing some thoughting around what are the different groups and how are you impacted. So students, for example, may not be equipped with the right tools at home, anxiety around a new social setting that's virtual, and teachers, certainly all the pressures on you all to figure out how to do teaching in a new way. And then, you know, administrators are trying to figure out how to real-time fund this new environment and as well as keep us safe. And so there's just, not to mention the parents. We have a lot of parents that we work with in our office who are also struggling with balancing working from home with having children learning at home. And so there's no shortage of challenges coming your way. And we just wanted to give you a little inspiration and some tips that hopefully will help you out, and also just to let you know that you can do it and you're not alone. So I think as I started out at the beginning, we've we've really been learning a lot real time ourselves and how to facilitate virtual sessions, virtual meetings and workshops. And a lot of these things we've been learning can really be applied in the classroom today. And I'll just start really quickly with a story of, it was back in, I think, May. My company asked me to facilitate a workshop in front of 50 CIOs across all of the state agencies in Oregon. They gather monthly and they talk about their job as a CIO. And the whole discussion was around the new challenge that they were all facing with everything suddenly being virtual. And it was the first time that I had facilitated any sort of virtual workshop like that. And I think looking back at it, I wish I had had a few of these tips that we're about to share with you. So we've learned them, we want to share them with you. And just moving forward, also wanted to really give you some inspiration that with every challenge, it is also an opportunity. And so some of the benefits that we're seeing from this virtual environment are, there's an opportunity to actually have more productivity and accountability from your students, really get them engaged in learning in an interactive way. There's also a lot of talk about equity and concerns around how do we create equity in the classroom. And with technology, it's certainly a new way to think about equity and new challenges there, but there are opportunities to be more flexible and more inclusive and really teach without borders. So things like, how can we bring people in? There's no travel restriction anymore. You could bring in someone from anywhere in the world and right into your classroom. So it's really exciting to think about, you know, how do we take a challenge and really turn it into an opportunity? And so with that, we're gonna introduce you to one of 3 or 4 different tools. So instead of giving you a whole bunch of stuff, we wanted to really focus on 3 or 4 things that you can really walk away with and start to try in your classroom. And since you're computer science teachers, we thought we would start with something related to Agile. So who's heard about Agile software development? Is that a new thing? Are you all familiar? Never heard of it? A few folks yes, a few folks no. We'll ask Terrel if he can bring us back for an Agile 101 in a future week. But essentially Agile is it's a way of building software. It's a methodology that's been around for a while that really helps you really, it's a set of values and practices and tools for how to build software. And what we've found is that you can actually think of it as a set of values first, and things that you can use to apply building of software actually really can work in the classroom as well as tools to help you engage your students. And so one of our first examples here is something called a Kanban, which is really just a Japanese term for billboard, and it's a pull system. So if you think about, if you're building something, you build this backlog of tasks or stories or work, really. You just think of it as work that needs to get done. And then you can engage your classroom in prioritizing the work that needs to get done. Maybe this is a set of learning topics for the day. Or, and then have them vote and prioritize on which ones are most important for them to do this week or today in the classroom. And so we're gonna use this real time with you so that you can get more comfortable with the concept. So we've actually prepared our agenda for this session as a Kanban. The backlog are the topics we're about to talk through with you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lindsay to talk about topic number 1.
Thanks, Ginger. So like I said, what I'm here to do is bring you guys some understanding of virtual presence. So let's get started with that. So I know you guys are all familiar with standing in front of a room, but you guys might not be familiar with being on a virtual stage, and that's what I kind of want to talk about today. And there's presence that comes with that. It's a little bit different. And so what I'm hoping to share with you are just some of those tips to make you confident while you're standing in front of the room, because that's the most important thing. And the first tip is just about lighting. It might not seem like a big deal, but in the TV news business, I often told people that lighting was more important than makeup, because it really does make a difference for how you show up. So I'm gonna show you 2 examples, but while I'm doing that, I'm actually gonna also turn off a light I have in front of me, and you can see how dark my face is. It's hard to connect, and that's the most important thing we want to do, is connect with our students. So consider finding ways where you can brighten up your face. That might mean not sitting in the back of with a window behind you, like the example there, because that's a no-no, but just finding ways you can either get natural light in front of you, or simply just getting a really easy, cheap lighting solution in front of you. There's tons of them on Amazon, especially with the selfie culture that we have. But you can also just get, like, you know, your lamp and put it in front of you. Let's go to the next tip. So MCUs, that's what we call a medium close-up. So this is really about framing yourself in the camera to make sure that you're visible, so that those students, again, can connect with you. Let's go ahead and look at the examples. I'm sure we've all seen number 1, where, you know, you've got either someone in a meeting or a student who is either got the camera and the computer super low below them, so they're hovering over the camera with, like, the nose shot that you're seeing. So the idea really is to get your shoulders in the camera lens, kind of like just below the shoulders you want to have, and then just a little bit of headroom up top of the image. You don't want too much, because then you look really small. And again, you want that connection for those students to be able to see you and see what you're doing is meaningful and hearing your message. So then we're gonna look at connection. So again, all of these tips really do drive that, but there are other ways you can do that too. And we're gonna talk about eye contact, because this can kind of get confusing a little bit, especially in the virtual world. It's actually different than when I was on TV news, for example. As you can see in the image, what we're all doing is looking at the content on our screens, but there is a little bit different eye level as you look at the screen versus where the camera's looking, and that creates a little bit of a eye gaze down. And so maybe not always while you're looking or teaching your lessons, but consider this in really important moments that you need to actually be looking straight into the camera lens for maybe a parent-teacher conference, or when you're having difficulty with a student and you might be having a one-on-one. There's gonna be moments where you actually directly talk to the camera. So in TV news, we were always looking at the camera lens, and the best advice was pretend the camera is your friend. It feels super uncomfortable in the beginning, and then you just start getting used to it. So now I'm gonna move over to kind of like the design and delivery. This is an opportunity to be super fun. I was in a digital platform of media, and now with social media, it's expanded a ton. So consider ways to make the media more fun. So for example, Ginger mentioned, why not invite someone who's across the world to tell your students about a story or an experience, or what the job is like in the real world. You can also consider videos, which I'm sure you guys use in the classroom, and some of the tools that Elizabeth is going to show you a little bit later. But there are ways to engage. And you can also consider doing things like the chat box, and we'll kind of get into the functionality of that a little bit more. The other note I want to share is make it move, right? So we've got Elizabeth right now actually drawing on the content. I studied a lot of vloggers when I left TV news, just because media had changed so much. And Ginger mentioned it up top. The attention span is really not there anymore. It's like 7 seconds. And so having movement in your videos, maybe with your content, that means having build outs, like in PowerPoint for our industry, animations have become a thing of the past, but they're actually becoming integrated in the work we do, because animations and having not as much content showing at the beginning helps us focus on what we're supposed to be focusing on, and then we can build out. And still, as you can see, Elizabeth engaging with the content and driving more, there's more for the viewer to take part in. And then on the executional level, definitely have a team. we have 3 of us here today. I've got Elizabeth doing my slides, which is incredible. And I know you guys are probably thinking like, I'm only one person, I'm up in front of the room. The job is for you all to be able to facilitate your content, most importantly, to teach your students. But why not have a student help you with the chat box and always having them be the moderator? So if you guys are uncomfortable with students chiming in over video, say, Alyssa's gonna be our moderator today. She will be moderating the chat. She is gonna be the one who's pausing me from time to time to ensure that if there is a question, I will answer it so that we still have that dialogue, because that dialogue is really important. So think about ways you can utilize your students, which will honestly just engage them in the process even more by giving them roles and responsibility.
Excellent. Thank you, Lindsay. I'm going to just exit out of this so I can, for just a moment.
While Elizabeth is transitioning for us, I'll share a quick story of some of our colleagues from our Chicago office. We're telling a story last week around teachers and some guidance that they've been told around how to prepare for the fall. And they've been given the guidance of actually in your first 2 to 3 weeks of your classroom, don't actually teach. And it seems kind of a crazy idea, but think about using that first week or 2 to really build a community in the classroom. And there's a lot of, I think, concern around online bullying or discipline in the classroom. And it was hard to begin with in a physical classroom, but certainly a lot of uncertainty about how the virtual classroom and how people are going to behave and just discipline in the classroom. So this whole idea you're about to hear about is really around how do we build a community in the classroom, especially if the students don't know each other yet. And that by building that community and the trust amongst your students before you even start teaching, here we're about to give you some tools that we use ourselves to do that.
Thank you, Ginger. Well put. So as Ginger said, this year we're not passing each other in the hallways. We're getting to know each other virtually, and students are getting to know you virtually. So we have some really cool ways that we've used with our teams just to build those social and emotional connections that we know that you need to engage and motivate your students. So when starting with a new group in a virtual environment, we recommend really just taking that time from the very beginning to show a true interest in each other, to build relationships, and ultimately to increase trust. I think we all know too, I guess I could say as a former educator, that we all know that we need to create that safe environment too for that learning to really happen. And by starting off with just getting to know each other, we're able to reinforce that expectation that this is a safe space for all. Additionally, I think intentionally structuring your class just around those first few moments to really show an interest in getting to know your students and understand their needs is ultimately going to help ensure that you're giving them the right support. So one idea that we have used that we'd like to share with you today is to create a personal profile. Think of it like social media, just there's a little bit of control, and there's a little bit of creativity that you get to put into this. So in starting out with a new group, we recommend that everyone creates their own profile. You as a teacher can create the template. What you see here on the screen is an image of a personal profile that I put together for a virtual team that I was getting kicked off with. We had some very specific questions around how we work, how we communicate. You could totally customize this though for your students. You know, what are they interested in learning? What was a highlight of their summer? What are they most nervous about for this year? I mean, that might be a tough one to get to, but if you worked with these students before, maybe they're ready to open up and share that with you. And as I said, it's ultimately gonna help you know as a teacher what they need and how you can best support those needs that they have. You could be creative with this. Like I said, we just did a PowerPoint for our virtual team. Maybe you wanna be more content specific. You wanna help them create an app or make a website. Take it away, take it any way that you want it. PowerPoint is just super easy to lift and implement. Also, be sure to create your profile too. Like I said, students are getting to know you, and this is a great way for you to share a little bit about who you are, how you work, and what they can count on you for. So after everyone has created their profile, now we recommend taking the time to share them out. So when we kick off a virtual team, or in your case, a virtual class, take a class or two to actually present out everyone's profile. So maybe you start as the teacher and then you go around the class having different folks share, and also leave time to ask questions. I feel like when we've done this on our virtual teams, the best part of the discussion has been the reactions that we have, like getting to say, oh my gosh, I've been there too, or hey, I know about Python, I can help you out, or I don't know. You can, again, follow the prompts that you give your students, but it's a really cool way. It feels like you're kind of in person together. So create the shared dialogue through this deck. You could also have people comment in the deck, you know, again, say, hey, this is something I know, or I can help you out there, or I've been to that place too. If you're doing something cool on an app or you're here on Zoom, you can react with different emojis or thumbs up. Ultimately too, it's a way that you could kind of use as a connection platform. If you are doing flipped classroom instruction, you know, sometimes you want to have those peer tutors. So it could be a way for students to identify, I have a skill in this, or I want to grow in that. And those students can find those peer-to-peer tutors through kind of this catalog of profiles that you create. There's so much you can do. I really recommend just making this time really intentional and personal. I haven't taken online classes, my spouse has, and you know, said it was kind of tough the first couple classes to just do like the chat, hi, who are you? Doing something like this, he said, would have been way more engaging and felt like he was in a real classroom. So just a little personal story for what it's worth. Want to encourage you to try this out. Okay, so we've covered tips for, one tip at least, for building community in a virtual environment. So we move that to the done category. Our next agenda topic is to practice setting up virtual group norms. So now that you know who's in your community, how you can support one another, it's now time to commit to some goals and expectations. Group norms, I think is what we call them, but you probably know them as like classroom rules or expectations.
Lindsay, could I interrupt you for a minute?
Yes.
We have just a couple quick questions in the chat window around what if students aren't familiar with PowerPoint or Prezi or Google? How could they, what kind of medium could they use to make a personal profile?
Ooh, I'd love to hear resources or ideas from the group. I think too, you could make it really simple, maybe do like some instruction to start out with on that and then have them make it. So you could do a little direct instruction and then have them take it for homework or something like that. Any other ideas out there from the group? And I can't see the chat when I'm in presentation mode. So Ginger, you're gonna have to be the microphone here. Let me know if something's coming through.
Yeah, I'm gonna call on Tuesday. She had a great idea with a Google form.
Nice.
And Matt as well had one for creating your own on a video.
Love it. I've used Flipgrid before. Really easy to use. You don't get that real-time interaction because kids upload videos, but Flipgrid's a really cool tool.
Hey guys, so this is Brian. Hi.
Hey Brian.
I'm an art and graphic design teacher, and what I've actually had kids do after I teach them some of the basics of Photoshop is they make autobiographical collages out of digital media, and then they explain it.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. Ginger, anything else coming through the chat?
Well, I was just inspired, real time. I'm gonna wing it here with this. I went to a yoga retreat not too long ago, and they wanted us to make a vision board, and I just happened to have it sitting here. But it's that, oh, it's not really working with my virtual background. Sorry, let me turn off my virtual background. There we go. Kind of a collage of photos, that would work too. But the whole idea, I think, is to share it back with people as well. So not just that they've created it, but they could share it with the other people in the class and use it as a tool to get to know each other. Back to you, Lindsay.
I was going to say too, you know, honestly, what teenager doesn't like to talk about themselves? So let's play to that strength. And also that social aspect of being able to share with their peers and have a dialogue around it. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Ranji raised her hand. So Ranji, stop being so polite and just ask your question. Have we talked about this already?
You just want me to unmute myself and
yes,
talk
go for it. That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really appreciating all the tools you're showing us, and I'm sure we'll be using all of them and drinking them up. But what I have a question that comes before introducing or before using them is, are you going to talk about how the feel of it all? So if I'm a kid in this class and I am just scared, or I don't know what's going on, what are some of the things I can do to really help them drop their guard, like on the first day, in the first week, in the first month? And then, like, I want that soon. Like, I'm super impatient about building those connections because, not because I'm Mother Teresa, but because when I do build those connections, my work gets easier. So maybe you will address this later. So that was one thing. The other thing I wanted to address is, if there are some tech-savvy kids in the class and they want to play around with this autobiographical stuff, that's great. But some kids will immediately get overwhelmed by, hey, why don't you use this to create that, and then do this, and then do that. And they're like, oh my goodness, I don't know where I am. I forgot my name. So just something I had to share. Thank you for taking my points.
Of course, thanks for sharing. We are going to have some open Q&A time, and I'd love to address both your questions. I think really your first one of how do you build connections even before the school year starts at our Q&A time. And that'll give folks maybe a little bit of time to think about it, and then we can have a good discussion around that. So is it okay if we save that for about a few minutes from now when we jump into that Q&A time?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, okay, great. Think on it. Well, I've got it noted for our parking lot that we'll come back to at Q&A. All right, so continue to drop questions in Q&A. If we don't get to them as we're going through this content, like I said, we have time at the end. We'll try to answer as many as we can. So one thing I think too that may help address what you were getting at, kind of like that fear in the classroom or that anxiety that comes with it, is setting group norms or rules. And like I was saying, there are some that apply for your physical classroom, but there are some that you're going to have to also bring in that consider the virtual environment that you're in. And I think that will ultimately help make the expectations of what students expect of each other, what you expect of students, and really what students expect of you super clear. You know, how you can make clear how you all want to communicate, how you're going to interact, what you're accountable for. And by having it really clearly laid out there, really specific and actionable norms or commitments that you can all make, it may help lessen some of that anxiety. Kids, again, they're just like you, walking into the unknown. So by making really clear what you can all expect of each other is a great way to help bring that emotional piece down and create some safety. So you can create group norms in a virtual environment. We're going to spend a little bit of time in Miro. That's where we're going to end up in just a few minutes to create virtual group norms together in a virtual collaboration tool. So as you get everybody in this tool, you can do a little instruction. It's pretty easy to learn it. You brainstorm some norms that you can all commit to, have a discussion. You ask people to vote on, you know, maybe your top 10 or top 12, whatever you want to narrow it down to, just so you have a good list, again, you feel like you can all commit to and you're proud of. And then post those group norms in a visible location. Maybe you have a learning platform or somewhere where students are going often to check for assignments or other work for your class. And so that it's visible, it's top of mind. And then do come back and review those group norms. I recommend like 2 to 4 weeks later, or maybe you revisit down the road, like on a monthly basis or as needed, just to make sure that those group norms are being met. You may even need to change or add new ones just as you go on and you get to know how you all work together in a group. So as I said, we're gonna jump into a virtual collaboration tool here in just a moment. To actually do this collaborative brainstorming together, but I want to do a quick introduction of the tool before we go there. There are so many tools for online brainstorming and interaction. There's Prezi, there's Mural. The one we're going to focus on tonight is Miro. Think of it like an online whiteboarding space. You can ideate and brainstorm without ever having to worry about an eraser. It's just this infinite space, easy to share, really cool stuff. Miro is free to sign up for on the website, so it's web-based. You just have to have an internet connection. There's also, I was doing a little bit of research, it seems like there's also some special options for educators to make it easy to share with your students. So in our follow-up resources, I'll share that Miro for Educators page so you can read a little bit more about it. In Miro, you've got tons of tools built in. What you're seeing here is some templates so that you can just grab and have a framework started right there for your discussion. There's interaction tools like voting, comments, Post-it notes, which you're going to get to play with here just momentarily. I would love, if I were in the classroom, to use Miro for like blended learning, maybe use the flow chart there. I'm going to take students through a few key concepts and then I'm going to let them loose. It's to go explore some resources or videos and work at their own pace. So I can just see you doing so much with this. We'll save how you could use Miro for instruction for another time. Tonight, we're just going to focus on how you can use it as a virtual collaboration tool. So I'm going to do a little bit of demonstration and then of how you'll get into Miro and what you'll do. Just a few easy steps, I hope, and then we'll set you loose to try it out for yourselves. I'm no Miro expert, I'm not totally inept, but I'm learning every day, and I find the more that I use it, the easier it becomes, and I just have to practice with it a few times, and I'm already getting the hang of it, I do feel like. So we'll see how I do here. So again, I'm gonna walk through this, the few easy steps, and then let you try on your own. So you were sent a Miro link earlier today, brought you to a board that looks like this. You may need to zoom in and out to get to the section that we're gonna start on, which is group norms. You see already a few people are in there. See, this is that collaborative aspect. I can see where everyone is. If it bothers you, by the way, there is a setting to hide all those arrows in case it's distracting. We can save that for our 201 course. Nonetheless, super easy to get started. What we'd like you to do is practice writing a sticky note. So you can simply double click and start typing away on your sticky note. You can also go over to the toolbar on the left-hand side of the screen, click sticky note, pick your favorite color, and stick it on, start typing. So really easy, it's like we were together and we're just collaborating on a whiteboard with our sticky notes. So what we'd like you to do for the next few minutes is think about a group norm you'd like to have for your class. We have some examples here on the left-hand side of the board in green. You'll see we've got thought of some examples for class norms that we think are actionable and specific. It would be important for us all to agree to, like we respect each other's time, so we show up on time and put all distractions aside. So take let's say 3 minutes. I'm gonna put on a timer, one of the cool features of Miro, and practice grabbing a sticky note, adding to it, and think about a group norm you'd like to have for your class as you begin. So I'm going to start the timer. And if you have any questions or you need help, Lindsay, Ginger, and I are here. We're watching the chat. You can take yourself off mute. We'll do our best to troubleshoot.
There is one great question that either T or Kathy might be able to answer regarding the students would need accounts. Have they agreed to privacy agreement? So, I mean, from our end, you could simply sign up the students just through the way I did it, which is I have an account and I own a board, and invite the students. But regarding kind of like the legalities of it, that might be something that they could give us more guidance on.
That's great. Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead, Terrell.
So I was just going to step in and say that any software that we'll use in the schools with our students have to be, at least in my district and by state regulation, has to be vetted. So it meets FERPA standards as far as being able to protect student data. But in this case, I haven't vetted it through my district, but the ability to log on with very little personal information. I didn't give any personal information besides an email and a password. So there's really, I'm pretty sure this will pass muster in that regard, but it's the FERPA regulations that I got caught on using a couple things that hadn't been vetted. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's just that as we're now doing more online and we're more exposed to the different softwares and tools that we're using, you check with your district on FERPA approval.
Thank you, T.
Great point, Terrell. And there are a lot of different virtual whiteboarding tools out there. We've latched on to Miro here in Portland because it is free and easy to use without a lot of login and account creation. But it does take some getting used to. I'll just say the first couple times I used it, I got really frustrated because it's just, there's so much you can do, and it's really just a white space that you can create whatever you want in. But it can be used for just about anything. If you feel a craving for your chalkboard or a whiteboard, this is just like that. It's just virtual. It's just a blank slate to engage your students with and create whatever you need to create to engage them and help learn the learning process. But like Terrell said, there are a lot of different whiteboarding tools out there, so don't feel like Miro is the only one to explore.
So it appears that they're anonymous after they've been created, right? They don't have somebody's name attached to them after they've been created. That might be important for some of the for some of the things that with some of the topics we might cover with something like this.
Yeah, I think there's a way to see activity. But yeah, it doesn't attach it to a name right here. But if you use the comment feature instead of Post-it notes, comments work kind of similarly, and your name is attached to that.
No, I want them to not be attached to something.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you like the anonymity. Okay.
Yeah, the anonymity. But the other thing, and I mentioned it just very briefly in the chat. Anytime I've tried to have a whole class in a Google Doc or on a Google Slides, the troll factor just takes over, and as much as we've already built relationships, these are great kids. All of a sudden, somebody's writing in letters this big, and taking over and kind of trolling the whole thing. And so I mean, how do we address something like that in a whole class tool? I love these kind of tools for small groups, but in whole class, I've had trouble.
Thank you for sharing. It strikes me something it could be a group norm that you address. And I hope too that not just you as a department or as an individual teacher are thinking about how to address that question, but your school can back you up as well and have kind of a overarching point of view on that. Can we note that for the Q&A? Because I feel like there could be a really rich discussion around that. And there was just one last tip we wanted to share, but I will note that for how do you kind of keep that expectation of student engagement appropriate? And I'm seeing the big sticky note there. Keep it appropriate for your students. If you want to all stay in Miro, you're welcome to. One of the cool things about it is that you can drag and drop videos or slides and pictures into the actual whiteboard kind of feature of this. So we put a slide of our last Kanban board here this evening. You see our last item that we wanted to address is reflecting on key takeaways. And one way that we can do that is through a retrospective. So I'm just going to zoom in on my Miro board. If you want to zoom in on yours, that's great. Or you can look here on Zoom. As Ginger mentioned, the term agile and agile teams, they often do at the end of a sprint or a launch of something, a retrospective. And that retrospective is a way really just to stop, reflect, and think about what's going well, what could be improved, what do we want to do better next time. So one way that you could use it in your classroom is maybe at a quick way to gather feedback, like at the end of a lesson or the end of a unit or the end of the week. Get quick feedback from students so you really know where they're having trouble or where they're looking for greater understanding around something, what questions they have. It'd also be a really cool tool to use for your department. You know, maybe you want to just do a retrospective or have a different way to facilitate a conversation around, let's celebrate what's going well and let's get after together some issues that we're all having. We can share some good ideas or resources. Retrospectives are really freeform in the format. Like there's some images here of what they could look like. So maybe you want to have multiple categories like this star shape that you see here with prompts like, what should we do less of, more of, what should we keep doing, stop doing, start doing? Maybe it's just really simple with 2 questions. What went well and what didn't go well? Ultimately, you get people sharing their ideas via sticky notes, and then you have a discussion about them. And I really feel like, again, if you were to use this for a classroom, you could have students even start the class, you know, after maybe a flipped classroom where they've gone off and done some video watching on their own. They come back and you start the lesson or you start your class time with a retrospective. What did you like? What do you feel like you got? And what do you still have questions about? And we're going to spend our whole class period just talking about your questions, but we want to generate the ideas from you. So I think that's a great way to build some accountability for doing the work ahead of time, watching the videos ahead of time, coming to class prepared with some questions or topics that they want to discuss. So we'd love to get your feedback again on the retrospective in Miro. So that's our last activity for this evening. I'm gonna have to zoom out so I can see the retro board. Feel free to grab some sticky notes and please let us know if you can think of all 3 categories, great, or just 1, that's fine too. Let us know, first column on the left, what was your aha moment? What really resonated with you? What tip are you taking with you? What would you like to know more about? We would love to share this content with other educators. So as we do the next revision, very much welcome your feedback and appreciate your time this evening. Definitely also want to know what questions you have. I know we had a couple already from the discussion that would like to dive into. I think we'll have to let T and Kathy let us know how many we have time for tonight and which ones you'd like to save for a different evening. We can definitely share any of the questions here with you so that as you go through the next few weeks, you can address them. I know there's many out there, and as we go through new content, you're sure to come up with more. So let's take just a couple minutes to add your sticky notes to our retro board.
And while folks are doing that, Elizabeth, I think I saw in the chat some good teamwork as far as answering the question around how
Excellent.
When we get folks in these digital tools, people just want to play and get a little antsy. And I think I saw some folks say recommend like kind of demoing the tool first and like just have a playtime in the tool and then start using it for functionality.
Absolutely, that's a great tip. I used to do curriculum consulting and curriculum software consulting, and that was always how our training started, was just, here's the tool, go make mistakes in it, go see what it can do, and just get comfortable with it. And just that time in the tool made people really ready to focus on what we wanted to get after. So that playtime, that sandbox time, definitely a best practice.
I didn't know that about you, Elizabeth.
I've had a few past lives before this, this current career. It's part of being an educator. You're a lifelong learner.
So while we're playing around in the retrospective in Miro, any questions, any topics, anything anyone wants to share or ask? No pressure. I'm going to start using teaching tricks and calling on people. Is that acceptable?
That definitely is.
Can you call on teachers when you're in a classroom of teachers?
Yeah, but problem with some of them might, like for example, a friend of mine who was doing a Zoom, he physically froze, and the teacher kept talking to him like Cady's doing right now, you know, but except her earrings are swinging, so she's not totally froze, pretending the screen is frozen. So, but no, we've seen a lot of questions. We can revisit those. I'm thinking 10, 12 minutes to address some of those questions. Feel free to raise your hand or just blurt in, folks. And I know we've seen questions throughout the chat, but and you've addressed a few of them as we have gone. But yeah, take a few minutes for questions. If not, we'll move on. But great so far.
I see one from Sherry in the chat window around any tips for asynchronous online engagement. That's a great one. That's another one where we can, at least I'll fall back on Agile for some examples of Agile teams. Kind of one of the principles of an Agile team is that you're asynchronous at times, and that the way you're able to be asynchronous is because you have these virtual tools that you can use self-service whenever you happen to be using them. So for example, using videos and uploading them to a website. There's some tips at the end of our deck here of some video storage tools that you can try out. So just creating things that are self-service is one way to be asynchronous. So use your classroom time to engage the students and interact with them. And then when they're not in the classroom, give them things to go do offline, or maybe even watch videos on their own time. And Agile teams use tools called Slack or Skype or Chatter, but these chat functions where you can chat with your students any time of the day, 24/7, wherever they are. They can engage through a social media chat feature, and that one's a little challenging if you don't have access to that kind of technology. But the idea, just like we're chatting here in Zoom, there are a lot of tools out there where you can create a virtual chat environment where asynchronously you can interact with people 24/7, and people will engage whenever they're online. Slack is one that we use a lot. I think it's free as well. Any other suggestions for asynchronous tools?
Discord will be presented on the 20th, so we do have that one. We know my kids use it and I don't, so that's actually the learning curve is me, not my students. So that may be natural for some of you if your students are using Discord a lot.
I see Discord and Canvas is another one in the chat window.
And Remind is great because you share and nobody gets each other's information, and it's through the school, and it's FERPA, you know, approved. And I used it all spring. I mean, I've been using it on and off for a couple of years, and there's some teachers in our school that use it extensively, but I used it all spring, and especially my kids who are trying to do college credit classes. We were texting back and forth on Remind. Even like I would even sometimes take a message at 9 o'clock at night, just to keep them engaged and stuff. So.
Yeah, so some great suggestions. One of the other questions that we raised was how to build trust with students on day one. So especially for those students that may be more shy or afraid to really engage in the classroom on day one, what are some ways to build that trust and comfort in a safe environment? Any suggestions?
Well, I think smaller groups, I don't know if we would have a chance how it will be set up for you, but in my case, I might have a smaller cohort of students that I would be addressing through Zoom where there's 4 or 5 students. And then I would use that as a chance to purposefully draw that person in a smaller setting rather than 24 or 40 students in a big grid. So I think we have to get down to that level.
That's a great idea, Terrell. For those who have the fortunate luxury of having more corporate level Zoom accounts versus an individual Zoom account, those Zoom accounts that come at, you know, the bigger, I don't know what they call it, the corporate level account, include polling features where you can just easily poll real time in the Zoom. And then they also have breakout rooms, which are really a really cool feature in Zoom where you can break the students into different groups and then virtually have them go into a virtual breakout group. You could have 5 or 6 different groups meeting at the same time in that small group setting, which is a really a way to implement Terrell's idea.
I know one question is how do we keep students from acting out, negative acting out, trolling, however we want to say it. You know, do we have ways, do we have someone monitoring that so they can be shut off? You know, it's not a lot different than it is in the classroom. We always struggle with that kid who's going to be playing a game as soon as we turn our back or, you know, whatever. We've all been there if you've been a teacher at all at any point in time. And so one of the concerns I had was doing synchronous in the spring, kind of all new to it. How are our kids going to react? And some of us are teaching high-tech kids. Okay, if they're not acting responsibly, they're pretty good at what they do. So, I mean, I don't have the answers because I really haven't gone through a cycle of continuous synchronous teaching and exposure in that sense. We have to come up with our own answers, but does anybody have good tips and tricks on that?
It gets a lot like in the classroom. You have to really front load your expectations and then enforce what you say, right? So if you say, we will be respectful on this online forum, the first time someone is not respectful on that online forum, I have to call them out, because if I let it slide, then I didn't really mean it and we don't actually have a rule. And even just my LMS, like I have, you know, classroom expectations. That's a online environment, and I refer them back even to our school's code of conduct. I mean, because what you say out loud and what you say online, there's not a difference there, right? And so if you're using disrespectful language or whatever in the classroom, like I have what I would do, and that needs to be consistent if you do it on a message board or a chat board or out loud in a video session.
And another idea that I've heard suggested was, are there ways to give students accountability for themselves and for other students? And that's a tricky one. Because you want to create equality in the classroom, but you also want to give students accountability for how all of them act. So if you think about ways that you might assign students responsibility for discipline in the classroom, maybe get them engaged in the success of the classroom. Any ideas for how to do that? That's easier said than done.
Well, I do want to be conscientious of time. I think we're over the time that you graciously gave us tonight, Terrell. Are there any last questions out there before we say thank you and just leave you with a couple resources that we'll be sending out? Just want to leave you with a preview of what's ahead. Terrell, anything else you want to make sure we cover before we do that wrap up?
Well, I just want to frame it in the sense that we really haven't been talking much beyond the general K-12 classroom. So what the principles you've brought to us are very general and very applicable across the board. So, you know, I think we're going to keep that in mind. I'm going to keep it in mind because I know that my peers and colleagues beyond this setting right here, would be very interested in hearing what you have to say and delivered and in this video. You know, it'll be just recorded, yes. But I want to just say thank you for bringing your perspective. The fear I may have had, if there was any, that you guys would be these business people that wouldn't have any understanding of what's happening in the classroom, but that I assessed that and you passed.
Come on now.
Yeah, no, they passed. I gave them an A because you actually brought it down to that educator level. It's that need to know and bringing the learning down to the point of significance and connection. So nice work.
Thank you so much, Terrell, for those kind words. We'd be happy to come back again as you all get into learning a little bit more. If there's specific things you want to know more about, very happy to partner with you all again.
Well, be careful what you offer, because yeah, this is. And by the way, folks, this is all pro bono. They are a business company, but they are doing this on their own time, and we certainly appreciate it. But yeah, no, I think we're going to have a chat here, not in too distant future, about the additional possibilities for spreading this kind of message to our members in OCSCA and beyond.
Ginger, I have a feeling there's an email coming your way.
Yeah.
We are Oregonians first and foremost, so whatever we can do to help our communities, that is what we're all here for. And I know Lindsay's got a few additional tips here at the end. We'll send this out so that you'll have it all in digital format, but there were so many tools to choose from. We tried not to give you all of them at once because no one learns that way, right? So we've got a few extras here at the end to try out on your own time. Some of them are additional whiteboarding tools, some ways to engage your students if you aren't lucky enough to have a professional Zoom account. There are other tools out there for online polling, online gamification, and hackathons. This is a really fun one that we thought was really applicable to the computer science world. So there are different ways to, have competitions and create competition, a safe competition in your classroom around even coding competitions. Hackathons as well is one we use a lot that we thought might be a fun one to try. That's a whole other session, Terrell, if you want to do a hackathon session. And then video tools. I think, Kathy, you sent an email earlier on, do we know any tools that will allow online video storage? There's a ton of them out there. These are just two that we've seen. One of our other teachers suggested Edu Creations. I don't think I pronounced that correctly. But another one that's used in the education community a lot. And then as far as Agile goes, that's a whole nother session for Terrell to consider, but there's so many Agile tools out there that you can apply in the classroom. So Kanban's one we use today. Lean Coffees is one we use almost every week with our clients. It's just a way to create a democratically formed agenda for how to facilitate a session. And prioritize it. So it's basically this premise of whatever's most important to the students in the room, they get to decide what they want to talk about that day. And so it's just a democratic way to form an agenda and facilitate a session. There's also, if you scroll down, Lindsay, the additional work planning tools, like I saw Kathy mention Trello and Asana. Those are two of our favorites. You can use Trello for just about anything as well. It's kind of like a whiteboarding tool where you can create retrospective boards or backlogs or curriculums as well. And then there's a ton of just emerging research out there right now around virtual pedagogy. So these are just a few links that I found when I was looking into it. But I am no expert in that topic, but I know there are a lot of people out there that are really trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work in this new way of teaching. So with that, we're grateful for the time we spent with you and grateful for everything you do to build the future citizens of Oregon or wherever they end up moving to.
Thank you, guys.
I think we need to recommend that Slalom work on our U.S. voting system, but I think that's a whole different.
Well, we are talking to the Secretary of State about helping with their statewide voter registration system. And
Oregon happy day.
Go to a whole new one.
Go to Florida. Go to Florida. Fix Florida.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
all.
And,
Thank you all.
we'll
Have a great evening.
Yeah, you will hear from us about additional opportunities to give things away for free. Give your
And
time
wait,
away for free.
our session isn't over yet, but we're going to let the Slalom people get on with their
We are,
evening.
so you guys can head on, and while we're letting them click the leave button or whatever they may want to do, we're going to bring Cady and Jason on here soon. An interesting thing happened a couple days ago. An after-school organization that represents Oregon and connected nationally came to us, me in particular initially, but to a few of us to build little video clips for their caregivers, their providers that provide after-school support for students and families around the state, saying, hey, T, we need some short clips about Seesaw and about Flipgrid and about, all these little things in Canvas. And we just need little clips so our providers can have a resource and they can help the students and maybe push that out to the parents. So with that, I thought it was a great suggestion. I'm going to employ you folks too. If you have something you use, we're going to create a repository of 2-minute clips of here's how to create an account and log in and use this tool. Something that's common, something that that maybe in your districts or neighboring districts would use at different levels all the way K through 12. And we'll do 2-minute videos initially, just quick hitters, something very useful. And then after that, if they want a deeper dive, then we would maybe do a longer video on more extensive instruction on the particular tool. So it's not a requirement, it's not an assignment, it's just an opportunity. So more about that in emails to come. I'm going to introduce Jason. Jason's still hanging around?
Yeah, I'm still here.
And Cady. So these two folks run a very robust computer science and engineering program at Sunset High School. I was telling a few of the early attendees of this evening that their administrator is a dream administrator. He champions and pushes and drives and cajoles and keeps and expands computer science at Sunset High School. And one thing I really appreciated is he said, I need computer science for equity. I need computer science for graduation rate. I need computer science. And, he would go down the line for the several things that he has reasons, not just for the career kids, but for the broad community at Sunset High School. So, that's an administrator that helps support what these guys are doing. And I'm going to put them on, and we're going to now get a little more specific about secondary computer science curriculum and online delivery, in class and online. Go ahead, Cady and Jason. Thank you for being here.
Cool. I'm going to share my screen, and I at least put a couple of slides together to help us get started. I'm hoping Jason will be my wingman and monitor chat and interrupt me. Good?
Thing. Yep.
Awesome.
To be clear, Cady is the one that did most of the work on this. I'm just here cheerleading.
We take turns. It's
We always need a wingman. We need a wingman.
That's right. Okay, everybody see that?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, so this is my tips to maybe not lose your mind this year. Maybe. No promise.
Too late.
Too late. This is the link for this Google Slides deck. I am not going to read the whole thing to you because there's a whole lot of words on it later. So instead, I highly recommend you copy that, or maybe Jason will put it in the chat so you can paste it. That would be awesome. So that we can talk right now and you can refer back to it later when you're like, I kind of feel like there was something on page 3 that I wanted to look at. That's what I recommend.
Cady, we'll list it in our resources on this class page.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Okay, so that's who I am, and it's got like my email address and our website and stuff like that so that you can find me later in case you come up with a question. And I very nicely didn't put Jason on there, but I will totally give you his email address too.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so to me, the better place to start is not what LMS am I going to use necessarily, how exactly am I going to run my day-to-day classes, but big picture, what does going virtual look like for you? So maybe you're a really programming centric class, and most of what you want your students to spend their time doing is doing programming in an online environment. Okay, so that would be like your framework. But maybe you are used to having a more hands-on class. So I teach computer hardware and we take things apart, right? And I teach electronics and we wire things up. So how am I going to have those hands-on experiences in a virtual way? How much teamwork do you usually use in class? That's Trello. That's one we use in the real world class, like when we're meeting. And I expect to use it in this virtual environment too. But so think about how much teamwork do you want on a day-to-day basis and how much interaction. I will not be hosting 60 minutes a day of live classroom time. That is just not something I'm going to do. It's not something my district especially wants, and it's not realistic for my content. And it's just, it's not gonna be what my classrooms look like. I will probably have something live every day, but it's gonna be more for that community piece and relationships and question and answer. It will not be me teaching things. That would just drive me crazy. And I wouldn't do a very good job at it. I much prefer to have my content flipped. So I make a video of myself, or even better, so Jason does really good videos of himself. I prefer to steal other people's videos because then I don't have to listen to myself talk later, which I appreciate. So instead I go find someone else who made an awesome video and I just paste in a link. And so my job is more curating things that make sense together and then helping kids get unstuck. In a virtual world, you're going to need a learning management system. Your school probably already has one. Canvas is what we use. I think T, you used to be on Schoology, right? Was that somebody was?
I know Chris Winnica was.
Chris Winnica. I reluct kicking and screaming using Canvas.
Right.
But I've leaned on Cady to help me do that.
It's awesome once you get used to it, but it is kind of a big ball to pick up and run with. Google Classroom is free, so if your district does not have an LMS plan, that's a really good place to start, and I used it before I had access to Canvas. It's okay. And then what devices are your kids on? Do they have actual computers? Do they have Chromebooks? Do they have iPads? Do they have paper and pencil, right? So what are they using? So to me, if you're approaching what is your virtual life going to look like this fall, I would stick on this landing page for a while and really think about, in a perfect world, or as perfect as the virtual world can get, what do I want my students to do during the time that they're interacting with my material? What are the things that I want them to do? Do I want them to be programming? Do I want them to be talking to other people and making a big project? Do I just want them to be able to check in with their classmates, but then they're making their things on their own? So I think these are the more important questions to answer before you get too bogged down into what virtual learning looks like. That being said, when you're ready to think about what virtual learning looks like, this is an example of a slide that I am not going to read to you because it is long and full of words, and slides that are long and full of words are horrible. Never do this in the real world. But later, once you have that link, you can come back and read through these, and we can certainly talk about these in our Q&A here. But I kind of broke it down into things that make really good online class experiences, like across the board, which our last presenters were really talking about. That sort of kind of works for everyone stuff, versus things specific to computer science and engineering. So I teach engineering more than computer science these days, but both. And so what are things specific to our disciplines that make them different than teaching English online or math online? I love me a good online tool. I really do. I love Trello. That Miro thing we were just looking at looked awesome. But I personally have 25 cool online tools, and If your student is in 4 classes or 6 classes and every one of their teachers has 25 favorite online tools, they're never going to want to look at a computer again. I don't almost want to look at a computer again when people are putting that many tools on me. So I really want to encourage you to, yeah, try out all those tools, but pick conscientiously when you're assigning something required to your students. Don't do it just because it's a cool tool. Make sure it is adding real value that you don't get in a way that they're already used to, right? No toys for the sake of toys, I guess, something like that. There are awesome tools out there and they really can value add to your classroom, but you shouldn't use them just because they're new and nifty. Inflict that on your co-teachers. Like Jason and I will totally try out some of these cool new web tools. We won't make kids play with them until there's really a good reason. The biggest recommendation I can make, especially for computer science and engineering classes going online, is the thing that you do the most for them is you help them get unstuck, right? You are their answer when they don't know what to do next, or when they're just lazy and they don't remember if it's supposed to be a semicolon or a colon, and they can just grab you as you walk by and you can tell them the answer. That's not going to be the case this year. So what are the things you can do to replace that interaction? So this means you need to hit debugging early and often. You need to arm your students with a hit list of where they can go to look for answers. I highly recommend setting up discussion boards or message boards where they can talk to one another. Yes, I really do encourage teaching them to use Google and look for their answers there. They should be able to reach you, certainly, but they need to have, like, 10 things to do when they can't immediately get a hold of you. Otherwise, you will spend every waking moment answering emails and you will not do anything else. And that's not a good way to live, right? My other really big takeaways before I go on are student choice and portfolios. But somebody asked about cheating, so I'm going to come back to portfolios in a minute.
Cady, is there anything specific to math that also goes along with those things?
Specific to math?
Yeah, there's
So
a question.
I would say that some of the things that are true for, so I actually am a math teacher, I used to be. I would say a lot of those things are the same, right? So you can't just swing by and tell them that they dropped a negative sign. So where are they going to go to figure out where they went wrong? Is there a good way to do maybe picture taking message boards so that they can get help from other students? Hit those self problem solving skills really hard.
And maybe even have them practice that, like everyone try taking a screenshot of an equation they put and put it on the board.
Yeah, totally love that idea. And when I'm making how-to videos, I mess up and I leave all of my mistakes in, right? And if I don't think I'm going to make a mistake because I'm doing something really easy, I do a mistake on purpose so that I can show them the steps I go through to fix that problem. And so that would definitely be something I would do for a math class, right? Like do a whole problem wrong and then wrap back to how you went and fixed it. Okay. Equity. It is a buzzword, but it is probably the most important buzzword that we have, right? It's really, really important. It's in computer science, a lot of times this defaults to, we want more girls in our class. And I do want more girls in my class, but equity is a lot bigger than that. It's, you don't have to look far around the Portland area to see how important racial equity and anti-racist practices are right now. It is really important in every single class that we are advocating for every single student, no matter their skin color, their socioeconomic status, their gender, you can make a very long list. So what does that look like? I highly recommend seeking out anti-racist educators groups. I'm in a bunch right now and they've actually been really great. They do tend to default to talking about lit class and social studies class, but a lot of the things, they're true in every single class. So think about a time when you wanted to post a picture of someone coding something. And maybe you were making a flyer, or maybe you were doing some instructions and you just thought, oh, I should just put a picture in this. And I guarantee you that when you type in, you know, student coding into Google and you click the little images button, you're going to get a certain type of photo that floats to the top. And so it behooves us all as educators to make sure that everything we do is representative, all the way down to not only showing Caucasian cartoon characters, right? So even if it's not even real people, it's just a cartoon character and they're kind of that weird, you know, Lego yellowish color. I'm not going to use cartoons unless I can find cartoons that represent a wide range of ability levels and races and genders and body types and. I spend a lot of extra time looking for photos just because I think that's really important. So that's one of them. For ELL students, it is really valuable to do things like not sharing PDFs, making sure you share text because it can be better understood by translation programs. Do your best to leave tech jargon, as much as we like to rely on it, out of your descriptions and instructions wherever possible, because they will get tripped up by the language translation programs and their translators, right? So if they're working with a support staff to help them through assignments and their translator has no idea what a while loop is, and you don't explain what that is somewhere, it's untranslatable. So that's worth keeping. There's a bunch of things on here. I'm not going to go through them all. You all know how to read. Okay. So I'm going to pop out real quick and show you one or two examples of how, no, that didn't work. I'm going to try, hold on. Here. Good. Can you see that now?
Computer hardware.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a Canvas class that I'm working on getting ready for the fall. It has a landing page. I really don't, I don't really love taking my picture. I don't really love being on video, but if I'm going to ask students to do it, I have to be willing to do it too. So there I am with my pet robot. And I like to have a really, really clear communication system. So this is the first page that pops up when someone goes to our Canvas class. And right down the list, they are going to click on the, now it says date, time, and insert link here because I don't even know what day we're starting yet. So prepared. Anyway, but they will go right down this list. In the meantime, please introduce yourself. So they'll click introduce yourself. And this is an icebreaker, kind of like the ones that we were talking about earlier in the hour. And so for hardware, these are the questions I'm having them answer: your name and your preferred pronouns. Highly recommend getting that one in there these days. Something tech related about yourself, something not tech related about yourself, and anything else you'd like to share. So I started them off, and something techie about myself, something not techie about myself, and then anything else. And yeah, silly picture of me as I think a 1-year-old, because I want to encourage them to share. And if I'm not willing to share, they're much less likely to be willing to share. When they have done that, and they can all comment on each other, and it's all tiered, and they can refer back to it later in the semester, which they really like. They take a little get to know you quiz, and that one goes just to me, but they have space in there to let me know if they, for example, maybe have limited connection abilities at home, if they're also working a full-time job now that COVID has hit, if they don't expect to be able to log in synchronously and they want to let me know that they're still interested, but that's not something that they'll be able to do. If they, anything that might not pop up on my Synergy, a lot of times students will put in there, you know, I have an IEP, and sometimes people don't always know about this particular thing that I really need. I really do need visual organizers as opposed to text. So I encourage them to put all that stuff in there, as well as silly stuff like their favorite hobby, so that I can bring it up in conversation later on down the line. I also put together just kind of a shell class for you guys. If you've never used Canvas before and you want to see how I set it up, if you want to send me your email or put it in the chat, I can add you to this test course just so you can poke around. But if you have Canvas, you probably don't need that. And if you have a different LMS, it might not be helpful, but it's there if you need it. All right, I think we're almost to the end of my stuff. Oh, so I have 2 bonus slides. One, icebreakers, community builders, things like that, list of ideas through a lot of the trainings that I've been to this summer and a lot of the reading I've done, and a bunch of things that I've tried in the past. These are all really good, like 2 to 5 minute ways to get students engaged or get them talking to each other. Man, they really love playing Pictionary. I don't know what it is about Pictionary, but they love it. Some of them really, really want to be the drawer, and some of them really, really want to be the guesser, but they all get into it. They also, teenagers love nothing more than to make other people watch their favorite YouTube video. It's like their favorite thing in the world. It's just true. And so drawing a number and letting that person share a class appropriate YouTube video, the biggest hook in the world. Anyway, there's just some ideas for you. And then one of the things I referred to on a previous slide is the idea of leveled activities. So I maybe have one assignment that says create a Python program that does this, but I need a way to differentiate it. And maybe I could do that in person in class just by saying, I really want you to push harder, make sure you add something to that. Or, hey, from your from this student's IEP, I know I need to break it down in this particular way, so maybe I only want them to do a level 2 on this particular assignment. But having it all broken down like that ahead of time means that you're not constantly reinventing the wheel for every student who needs something slightly different, and can really help. And having it all pre-written out like that makes your life a little easier. Okay, so almost there, almost there. T also asked me to share our pathways and what we do. So here's our computer science pathway. This is our Explore class. We do a few weeks of everything, literally. For robotics, usually we use Lego EV3s. This year I think we're going to be on VEX Code due to its virtual nature. In computer hardware, we do Python. I use a mix of SunsetHS and self-made stuff, and usually a whole lot of tearing computers apart. Our web design classes, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, CodeHS, Replit, a bunch of self-made stuff. Game design is usually Unity, but what with being on Chromebooks, poor Jason got to invent a game design engine from scratch this summer because he has nothing better to do.
Yay.
Java and C++ and data structures, their requirements are by PSU, but Jason writes the curriculum for them. For engineering pathway, it shares the same Explore class. In our CAD section, I do Fusion 360, hoping to lend out enough computers that I'll still get to do Fusion 360, but if I have to, I will go to Tinkercad and or Onshape for CAD 1. I do a mix of custom stuff and Autodesk Academy. In electrical engineering, we do a whole lot of circuitry and Arduino. I do some CodeHS stuff, mostly it's self-made. Robotics is the same as the other slide. Mechatronics and engineering capstone are completely project-based and portfolio assessed. And I made this stuff for that. Okay, whew, that's like more talking than I do in an entire day. And then I went too far. So what can I answer?
I think you should talk about your idea of portfolios as a really good way to assess. I think that's going to be the way that we're going to have to do that for all our classes. And Bartlow, I think, is coming to the similar conclusion.
Okay, so our two pathways, computer science and engineering, this one is mostly Jason and I do a little bit of stuff. And this one is mostly me and Jason does a little bit of stuff. And so currently, the whole engineering pathway is assessed via portfolio. So students do formative learning, they do practice stuff, I give them feedback on their practice stuff, right? But at the end, what they have is a project, right? And they take those projects and they gather them together into a portfolio. I'm doing digital portfolios on Pathbright. Do you think that's worth showing?
I think so, especially to give them an example of what a student project looks like.
Let's see if I can type and talk at the same time. Ooh, we'll see. Oh, no, nope, Google, where'd you go?
So the big thing that she's getting at is that when we were looking at how to actually show students, what we're looking at is process, really. Like, we get an end product, and that's nice, but we really want the students to reflect on the steps they've taken and actually show their steps they've taken. It helps them to really understand what it is that they're doing, as well as it helps to cut down on cheating, because you can't fake the whole process all in one go. So,
yep, that is absolutely one of the biggest ones. Also, I have now been doing this long enough that I can say I have good feedback from my actual graduated students who have taken their portfolio off to college with them and used it to help them get internships or get into programs or in future interviews, because it really is a more powerful tool than saying, I took this class called engineering in high school. Like, that's just not enough by itself. But them being able to take this portfolio with them and show exactly the skills they have is really powerful. So I have a example one that I did up here. So I have a couple of projects on it. This is what I was doing this spring from home. It's a automaton made out of a breadcrumb container and I think an old magazine, because I was trying to get them to see that you could make out of things in your recycling bin. So I figured I had to do that too. And so there it is, it's very cute. And so if you go through this, let's see, can I minimize that thing? So as you go through, kids have their whole explanation of their process over here. What went well, what went badly, what they would do different next time. They have an opportunity to explain the exact tools they used. Here you can see the SparkFun breadboard and an ultrasonic sensor. The close-ups of what happened. I had some videos that I made, so I made sure those went in here. There's a link to the actual Arduino code. Oh, there it is. There's the Arduino code that was written for it. And so when they're done, I have a really, really clear idea of what they did. If they did any soldering, they really make sure to highlight that in there because they love soldering. If they used a Instructables to get started, they cite their Instructables so that I know that's what they started with, and then I can see what they did differently on their own. So portfolios in general, you know, before I found Pathbright, this could have been just a PDF, or it could be Google Slides. That would work just fine. But I really like Pathbright or something like it because it is digital and they will take it with them, and it looks very clean and professional in a way that, like, dropping it all into a Google Doc doesn't. And so it becomes a real artifact that they own when leaving my program.
So Cady, is Pathbright free?
Pathbright is free, and they are an educational tool, and they signed our FERPA agreement with our district, no problem. Perfect. So you probably would for you too.
Thank you.
Okay, what else? Anybody? Let's see. I am attempting to try and read back in chat to see, but my goodness, you guys typed fast. Okay.
Do you have a rubric for the portfolio to show?
I do. Let's see, where would I have that?
Is that in the assignment section?
Sorry, I'm teaching kind of a lot of classes at once these days.
Me too.
It might be in here. So basically, one of the things that I really like about Canvas is that I have, for example, all of my outcomes. So if you're a lucky person that has to teach to a standards set, I just drop all of my standards in here, right? And then when I go to an assignment and like here was their final portfolio, there's the standards that it will go to and my number options, and I just click, 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 click. I have a little bit at the very beginning, probably in modules, on why do we make portfolios? And MIT is really, really into portfolios. So they have this whole great website of, you can look at past student portfolios to help get ideas of what should be included, which is really great. And they have this long presentation of how great portfolios are. So I say, hey guys, if you don't believe me, there's MIT. And then I have some examples in there too for them to look at.
This kind of design, the way she set up her assignment, that's what I heavily rely on as well, where you have like a series of tutorial pages, whether that be videos or walkthroughs or whatever, and then the assignments listed after that. And so the kids kind of just walk down through the order of it.
So computer hardware has a really good example of that because there's a lot of stuff in there. So they have like unit 1 and they have a pretest and then they learn about networking and they take a little check-in quiz and then they do more networking and then another check-in quiz and then a scavenger hunt and then, right? So like my whole class is in here. There's so much stuff. Ooh, so much stuff. Woo. Okay. But portfolios, how you grade them is going to be a tiny bit different depending on what grading scheme has been imposed on you. If you are in points, you can divide up categories of what you think the points should be. If you're in standards like I am, I just kind of have a description of what I'm looking for under each standard, and then each standard gets that 1 through 4 grade. Typically speaking, if they did what I asked them to do, that's a 3. If they did what I asked them to do and a little bit more, that's a 4. If they got kind of close but didn't really quite get there, that's a 2. And if it just sucks, that's a 1.
Katie, we have a quick question. Kid, somebody, folks want to know if they can have access to your Canvas class as visitors. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I mean, it is so much stuff. The challenge is going to be that I have this many, well, this many courses.
Yeah, that many.
This many, right? So
sit down.
What I would recommend is send me an email of what you actually want to see, or we can set up a Zoom and I can even like give you control so you can click around. But I because it's managed by Beaverton School District, I can't just add people outside of the Beaverton School District to my courses, much as I have tried. I can download a whole class and send it to you, but I don't think you want me to do that 50 times because they end up pretty big. So if you just let me know which things you want, I would
looking
be
specifically for a CS class, and I'll connect you with the person who's asking.
Perfect.
And that might be better to look at some of mine too, if it's more programming centric.
Yeah, it depends on what language you want. I have Python and Arduino and a good like intro class, but Jason does our JavaScript, game
Java,
design,
C#, processing. So a
and
bunch of those others.
We'll send you more stuff than you could possibly want.
So guys, the question, the thread that's been through going along here, at least this evening, is what about plagiarism? What about, you know, can you trust a kid's code?
That's why That's why the
did it.
portfolio was such a
So
big deal.
yeah, is that your main strategy for watching progress and checking for, you know, turning in somebody else's code?
That is absolutely one of them. We also have, Jason, do you want to talk about Git maybe while I?
Yeah, so I'm pushing my kids to use Git and GitHub a lot more, where they have to do multiple commits, or in other cases, there are other websites where you can see a commit history, and there has to be more than one. If code magically appears, I don't give them any credit. And I tell them up front that it is important that they know that coming in. So if they are going to try and do it all in one session, they know they better save it a couple times in the middle of that to prove that they're actually working on it in the middle. Because I no longer have the ability to see in class they've been working on it. It's not just like they've been slacking, magically the code is there. So that's something that gives you a regular check-in, or something where they have to clearly be able to define the entire thing. That's really important, because cheating was a big deal this year. We had a lot more of it than we ever had, even with all the things that Cady is about to show.
So one of the other things that we did is we kind of said part of the problem, I mean, the dedicated cheaters, there's only so much you can do, much like in English class. So what you really have to decide is, are they all dedicated cheaters? And I would argue that the answer is no. A lot of them don't see it as cheating. A lot of them think, oh, well, I'm just sharing what I worked on with my friend together. Or like, yeah, I looked that up on, you know, GitHub or wherever, but I looked it up, so now it's mine, right? And so there's a little bit of disconnect between what is cheating and what is, you know, it's just internet culture. And so we thought it was important to be really specific about what is and isn't cheating and copying and programming, because it does look different in a English class than it does in a coding class. And so this is the presentation that we made about it that's in, I know, all of my coding classes, and I think Jason has it posted in his too.
Yep.
Can you post a link and make that shareable?
Yes, I can absolutely.
And we'll put it in my resources for everyone.
Sure, I would be happy to. So this has, you know, kind of the discussion. Why is it bad? I just copied from someone else. It's not that big a deal. Okay, and then we said, but when is it okay? Because we are gonna go look I mean, I've been coding for an awful long time and I still go look things up on SourceForge. It's just the way it is. And so if that's true, how can a student correctly give credit for that? There's no list in their MLA or APA manual on how to cite a code snippet from SourceForge. It's just not. So how are they gonna do that? And so they need you to tell them how to do that and when it's okay and when it's not. And so this is what we have come up with. And I will send the link to this presentation so you can look at it and, you know, decide on your own standpoint. Maybe you think this isn't okay. That's okay too. But what if I ask my friend or the parent or internet for help and now I get it? Well, that's fine, but you should document that help. So I expect my students to put a comment that says, my dad helped me with this part, but now I get loops and this is how it works.
If you think of it from a literature standpoint, it's like citing your sources.
It's exactly what it is. And that's exactly how we talk about it. We say, in your comments, you must cite your sources.
Even if it's your friend who was helping you.
And so then we give them examples on exactly what that should look like. Here's where I got the code. Here's the website it came from. And here's what it does now that I understand it. From a forum, from a person, from a website in 3 different languages. Woo! So yes, I will share this. Does that help a little bit? That's the other. So portfolios is one big part of it for me. And then having this conversation up front to try and kind of differentiate between I just thought it was okay and no, I'm really dedicated to the art of cheating.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I think it's very helpful. Those are actually 2 very concrete strategies to help with the situation that we all face. Thank you. You know, we're hitting the 2-hour limit, at least for me. And someone's, I think maybe Kathy, you said it was drinking from a fire hose there for a bit at times, you know. But fortunately, this is recorded. Fortunately, we're going to have all these links in there. And fortunately, you know, we can go back and review. I've been taking notes as well. You know, I've got scribbles all over, and all good, you know. So
you can always ask us too.
What's that?
You can always just ask us too.
Oh yeah, there they are right in front of you. But their emails are we'll get to them, and they've always been very helpful in answering questions and sharing resources. So have at it, folks. Yeah, we're going to put a limit on 2 hours on these things. Next week, Chris Winnicka from Century High School will be talking about his curriculum, which leans towards a website, web-rich coding that he has, among other things, and he has some tips and tricks as well. I'm going to talk about my curriculum at Sherwood High School, and